Wow, that's a really good point. Such a good point, in fact, that I do seem to have stabbed myself on it. At least it wasn't a hot take, that would have smarted. No worries, I can just patch this up with a Band-Aid. Damn it. All my Band-Aids have cartoon characters from big corporations on them. Or they're the non-fabric ones that don't stick. Oh, should I show a copyrighted character on camera or should I bleed out? What to do? Mom?
What? I'm making myself a daiquiri on the rocks.
I did not think that would work. I'm hurt, and also I think a daiquiri is mostly ice.
Is that a stab wound? Yuck! I ain't cleaning that up. I don't care where you've been.
I've just remembered why I moved out.
Hey, maybe you can help me with something.
I called you to help me.
I tried to post a Minions on my Facebook, but they keep taking it down.
This says it's a 91-minute copyrighted video.
That Minions movie says more in 91 minutes than I ever could across all my long years.
Well, it's no wonder it got taken down.
Put it back up then.
I can't.
I'll do it.
You shouldn't.
You're no fun. No wonder you got stabbed.
Listen, I'm about to explain the basics of copyright, so that'll explain why I'm being such a fuddy-duddy.
Well, I'm going to go get a top-up, so that'll explain my absence.
Fine! Hi there, Beck Petratus here, the person in the uni group project who dobbed on you for plagiarising because she respects copyright and hates having friends. And this week's relevant question comes to us straight from the internet. How does copyright work in Australia and how can it impact what I post on the internet? Full disclosure, I usually only talk using reaction GIFs from MVC sitcoms. Great question, Spleven, and a Ron Swanson thumbs up .gif to you. Let's get into it. Copyright is defined by copyright.com.au as a form of intellectual property that protects the original expression of ideas, enabling creators to manage how their content is used. A definition which is itself protected by what it defines. It's why I can't show you this, or even this. I mean, I shouldn't show them anyway because they're all penises, but I'm also not the copyright holder. This picture I can show you, however. It's an out of focus photograph I took myself of a penis. So when is something protected by copyright? The moment something is made, copyright automatically applies, whether that's text, photos, videos, or a hot dubstep track. But there are a bunch of exceptions that fall under fair dealing, allowing for beneficial uses to society as long as it's fair. But it's only considered fair dealing if it falls under these specific exceptions. They are if the material is used for criticism or review, research or study, reporting news, parody or satire, enabling a person with a disability to access the material, and professional advice by a lawyer, patent attorney, or trademark attorney. So let's break those down. You can use material for criticism or review. Like if you're reviewing a film, you can show clips from it, but you do actually have to critique it or you can find yourself in trouble. Because just playing a film and watching it without comment is going to the movies. Another exception is if you're using the copyrighted material for research or study. You don't have to be going to school either, which is great for me because I love studying for fun. This is not a joke, I'm a big nerd. You do have to be careful how much you use because if you use too much of the copyrighted material, that's not research, that's piracy. There's also an exception if you're reporting the news, but whatever copyrighted material you're using has to be necessary in your reporting efforts. You can't just report on climate change and use the Merry Man's feeling hot, hot, hot in the background, even though that would be a very catchy news report. Using copyrighted material for parody or satire is probably my favourite exception. It feels like there's a bit of a burn in there because if you just say it's supposed to be funny, that's not a defence, which means you can have the most unfunny satirical article in the world, but if it sufficiently draws attention to characteristic or actions such as vice or folly by using certain forms of expression, you're all good. Parody is a bit more complex, but the crux is that your parody song about Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license needs to make comment or criticism of the original work. So think about that before you go do your guerrilla music video in a Vic Roads. There are also exceptions for breaching copyright in order to make that material more accessible. There are a lot of rules around it, but the exception can allow for organisations to provide, say, an accessible copy of a movie to someone with disabilities if it's not available on the market. There are also exceptions about being able to show copyrighted material for the purpose of giving professional advice by a lawyer, patent attorney, or trademark attorney. And if you're in that situation, I would probably ask your lawyer for clarification. They seem pretty smart. There are, of course, exceptions to all these exceptions, so really look into it to make sure you're doing the right thing. Fair dealing only applies when the use is actually fair, which can be impacted by a bunch of factors, including the importance of what you're doing, the amount of material you've used, and whether this impacts the potential marketability of the original work. If you can't use it under fair dealing, it might be worth looking for something else, and that something else might fall under a copyright license, which allows you to use it. If someone has put up their work under a Creative Commons license, there's a lot of use cases. There are a few different license options, all with different rules. Some you have to credit the original author, others you have to be using the material for non-commercial purposes, but if you follow the rules of the license, you can use the work for your own purposes. That's why we can gaze upon this image of Stacey while listening to fantasyorchestra.wav. That's the stuff. Now here is where some of you might go, I've heard of royalty-free content. Tell me about how I can use that for free. And here's where I say, no! Stop it! Royalty-free does not mean free to use. What gave you that idea? The word free? Are you skipping over royalty? Are you the f***ing queen? No, you aren't. Unless you are, in which case, sorry, Your Majesty. Don't use royalty-free stuff thinking it's free. Generally, you pay a fee for it initially, then you won't need to pay ongoing fees or royalties. Your Highness. Another phrase you might hear on your travels is public domain. That's when the rights around the work have either been waived or lapsed, meaning you can use that material freely. In Australia, works generally lapse into the public domain after 70 years, but there's also so much beauty that has been given freely to the public domain. Here is just a small sample of the wonders you can behold.
A sunbather exposes herself to an assortment of radiation.
A good little case study is The Great Gatsby, which is one of the latest popular works to enter the public domain. It means I can redistribute and remix the work itself for commercial purposes. So please look out for my new book sequels, The Greater Gatsby, The Greatest Gatsby, and my alternate reality fiction, The Great Gatsby, where Gatsby is a sentient metal grate. Now that's a really brief overview of copyright, but the best way to be safe is think before you post. If you didn't make something yourself, then check the licensing of the thing and sort it out. Here's a bunch of websites too where you can find Creative Commons and public domain material that might help on your next project.
Yoo-hoo, my sour little tub of your play, but did me
Did you catch all that?
Yes, I did, but it's fine now because it turns out my friend posted the Minions movie years ago, so I just reshared that post. Gotta raise awareness for Kevin, Stuart, Bob, all the other Minions that are named after dads for some reason.
But copyright?
Oh, it's fine. No harm's coming my way, I'm sure of it.
Well, let's check in with the consequences that you can face if you run foul of copyright law. That'll spook you.
Darling, who are you talking to?
Oh gosh, I hope someone. Yes, that's right, it's time for everyone's favourite game show. What can happen if you infringe copyright? Inbox number 1, it's a letter of demand for breach of copyright. This informs you of what you've done and can be used in court proceedings against you. But what if you're doing copyright infringement on a commercial scale? That could be criminal, and you might be subject to box number 2. That's right. Fines and jail terms. And how much might those fines and jail terms be? Well, penalties vary. But it's up to 5 years in prison and up to $117,000 worth of fines for individuals and $585,000 for corporations. Those are pretty big penalties. Why are we doing this in the first place again? The purpose of copyright laws is to encourage people to create cultural products such as books, songs, movies, and fine arts. Through ownership, the idea is that artists can make money off the things that they create. Professor Beth Webster questions wielding the copyright laws to prosecute people when most royalties go to very few authors or to big production corporations and publishers. It does make it seem like the copyright system wasn't made to help the little guy.
I'm not scared. I've been not listening to the rules for years. The amount of songs I uploaded to LimeWire, they could take my beautiful home or my grand collection of exotic hats.
But
honey, you know it's more complex than you're letting on. I'm pretty sure you've bent some of these rules yourself.
I mean, Well, yeah, okay. It's a wild west out there. People are making so much stuff it's almost impossible to police, but that doesn't mean you can't get in trouble for it. And even though many are calling for reform, these laws still apply. You should work out what the risk is and make sure to mitigate it, but follow the rules as much as you can. Breaching copyright is like parking in a no standing zone. You might get away with it, but you really shouldn't do it.
Oh, well, you've changed my mind. I shall be more careful posting on the internet next time I do it. Now, sorry, darling, I've got to go to work. Selling bootleg DVDs of Avatar at the Dandenong markets. Ta-ta!
What decade are you from?
Ugh.
As always, don't just listen to me on copyright. I'm just a doofus who has a journalism degree, which should make you not trust my judgment in the first place. Don't believe what you've read without reading it twice, and even then, read it again. Until next time, I've been Beck Petratus, and please enjoy the following footage, which I hereby release into the public domain. I regret putting this in the public domain. Let's take it back.